Certainly don't support that action yesterday. I think it was very inappropriate at that event. That funeral was held to honor Officer Ramos, and to bring politics or to bring issues into that event, I think was very inappropriate, and I do not support it. He is the mayor of New York. He was there representing the citizens of New York to express their remorse and their regret at that death, and it was inappropriate.
Since the gunning down of two New York police officers, Win Jianlu and Officer Rafael Ramos, there have been a lot of calls for the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, to be kicked out of office. A lot of people want him to resign. Well, I'm going to thread this all together through you for you. The reason why those resignations have been coming forward is because over the past nearly 3 to 4 months, we've seen the stories of Michael Brown, the young black man who was shot in Ferguson, Missouri, and then also in New York City, Eric Garner, who a grand jury decided not to indict the police officer in that case. You, of course, remember the I Can't Breathe. That's the situation that caused a number of protests in the state of New York and all across the United States. Well, Mayor Bill de Blasio attended many of those protests. So amongst the police force in New York City, they feel that Bill de Blasio is far more on the side of the protesters who hate the cops, their words, versus those who put their life on the line every day. We, of course, just showed you a clip of Will Batten. He is the police commissioner in New York, not approving of a number of hundreds of police officers at the funeral of Officer Ramos turning their back on Bill de Blasio when he got up to speak. Atar Khan and JJ McCullough, our Sun News contributors, are here. Okay, that's the best way I can sort of thread this all together, Atar, but it was a significant moment. You see a sea of blue, thousands of police officers turning their back on Bill de Blasio when he got up to speak at the funeral. Appropriate, not appropriate? What do you think?
Well, I think it was certainly symbolic. And I think the thing that fills me with rage, as well as trepidation, as well as exhaustion, as well as apprehension, is not so much the police union going after Mayor de Blasio, not so much Mayor de Blasio saying the things that he said in the past, but it's a segment of the protesters that say things that are absolutely ridiculous. For example, if you went to social media after the two cops were killed, you'd see many tweets about people showing complete indifference or actually joy upon hearing that officers have been killed. And only after hearing that the officers were minorities did they express some sort of remorse. So that I find extremely troubling. And these are supposed to be people of the compassionate left protesting for peace. And they seem to forget that George Orwell actually said that it's the reason we can sleep peaceably at night is because there are rough men who are willing to give up their lives to protect us and be rough.
You know, JJ, it's an extraordinary story, as I say, that has threaded its way through sort of the last part of 2014, and now we see it coming to a close as the year ends. But Bill de Blasio has been controversial pretty much since the day he was elected. But with that said, memories are often short with the electorate. He'll be up for a re-election in three years or so. Does this sort of thing stick? Because the police union, like so many unions, are extraordinarily powerful in their jurisdiction. And in this case, I think that the rhetoric coming from the police union, from Patrick Lynch in particular, the head of their union there, he said that de Blasio, quote, has blood on his hands. That's not helpful in these sorts of situations. But does he have a point when you have the mayor of your city marching in lockstep with those protesters?
Yeah, well, I mean, it very much sort of, you have to get in sort of the political realities of New York City, which is a sort of a unique sort of political ecosystem. It is very, very minority heavy. I mean, there's a lot of minorities in that city, and Mayor de Blasio wins about 90% of the black vote. He wins about 90% of the Hispanic vote. You know, the only sort of realm in which Republicans and Democrats are remotely competitive is for basically the whites and the Jews, frankly. And, you know, de Blasio is a traditional big city Democrat in that a lot of his base is, as I said, based around minorities, and a lot of minorities feel, justifiably or not, that there is this kind of conspiracy by the cops that are out to get them. And so really the more de Blasio plays into this sense of persecution, this sense of victimization, which he has said quite explicitly, you know, that he buys into. I mean, Mayor de Blasio has a black son, he's married to a black woman, and he actually has had given speeches in which he talks about how he fears for his black son's life at the hands of the police and this kind of thing. So I don't think it in any way sort of goes without saying that this is not in his political interest to do. I mean, the folks that are rallying against him, sort of working class whites, I do not think are the base of the New York Democratic Party in the year 2014. So. Whereas, you know, the minorities and Hispanics do. I mean, to the extent that there's any sort of questions to be asked, I think it's if there will be any consequence for him perhaps being in any way associated with the murder of a Hispanic cop.
Yeah. Does this rhetoric carry on into 2015, Attar, again, for the New York police versus de Blasio, and will it spill over into other jurisdictions?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people who are on the ground actually have a lot of resentment for the police as well as the mayor's office, right? They're politically disfranchised or whatever you want to call it. But so it's interesting that who are these people actually trying to please? It seems like they're just going in there, moving in their own best interest. For example, the police, the NYPD, we know has a long history of opposing the mayor's offices, right? So it's not just this particular mayor, but of course we have to mention, for example, his opposition to stop and frisk, his support for police retraining and for body cameras, his, as JJ alluded to, his speech where he gave, or his statement where he talked about in the wake of the Garner grand jury decision, talking about his biracial son needing to take special care when interacting with police. So it's a matter of what you say, but also a matter of what you don't say, right? And so I understand Rudy Giuliani, among others, being extremely angry and wanting the mayor to apologize, and I think he should.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like Giuliani said, he didn't agree with the police's actions, the police officers' actions by turning their back on the mayor, but definitely said that the mayor does owe them, at the very least, an apology.